The millionaire CEO and the little girl Marcus Sterling had everything money could buy, yet as he sat alone in the corner booth of the upscale Manhattan restaurant, staring at his untouched $50 steak, he felt emptier than ever. The mahogany walls, crystal chandeliers, and soft jazz couldn't fill the void that success had carved in his heart, but what he was about to witness would shatter his perfectly constructed world and teach him the true meaning of wealth. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more inspiring content that will change your perspective on life. It was a Tuesday evening in October when Marcus first noticed her. While other patrons chatted over wine and artisanal desserts, a small figure moved quietly between tables like a shadow. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with tangled brown hair escaping from a worn ponytail and clothes that had seen better days. What struck Marcus wasn't her appearance, but her careful, methodical movements as she collected leftover bread rolls and uneaten portions from abandoned plates. The little girl moved with the precision of someone who had done this many times before, her small hands quickly wrapping leftover food in napkins before tucking them into a faded backpack that seemed too large for her tiny frame. She worked efficiently, avoiding eye contact with diners and staff alike, as if she had mastered the art of invisibility. Marcus watched, transfixed, as she approached a table near his own. The previous occupants had left behind half a grilled salmon, untouched vegetables, and a basket of bread. The child's eyes lit up momentarily before she composed herself, quickly gathering the food with practiced movements. It was then that their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed suspended. The little girl froze, her hand halfway to the bread basket, her dark eyes wide with fear and anticipation. Marcus saw something in those eyes that made his chest tighten, not shame, but a quiet dignity mixed with desperate hope. "Wait," Marcus said softly, rising from his booth. His voice was gentle, careful not to startle her. "What's your name?" The girl clutched her backpack tighter, ready to flee. I'm sorry, sir, I wasn't stealing, I was just." Her voice trailed off, small and uncertain. "You weren't doing anything wrong," Marcus assured her, taking a cautious step closer. "I'm Marcus. What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the exit. "Emma, that's a beautiful name." Marcus knelt down to her level, his expensive suit creasing on the restaurant floor. "Can you tell me why you're collecting this food?" Emma's lower lip trembled slightly. "My mama is sick. She can't work anymore, and we don't have much food at home. She told me never to beg, but she said it's okay to take what people don't want anymore because it would just get thrown away anyway." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here he was, a man who owned 3 homes, drove cars worth more than most people's annual salaries, and employed hundreds of people, watching a child scavenge for food to feed her sick mother. His own meal, which he'd barely touched because he was too busy thinking about quarterly profits, could probably feed Emma's family for days. "Where is your mother now?" Marcus asked gently. "At home, she has the coughing sickness, and she gets really tired. I told her I was going to the library, but I come here sometimes because people leave so much good food." Emma's honesty was heartbreaking in its simplicity. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart through years of corporate battles and boardroom victories. "Emma, would you like to sit with me? I was just about to order dessert, and I hate eating alone." Emma hesitated, her survival instincts warring with her exhaustion and hunger. "I don't have any money, sir. My treat," Marcus said with a smile that felt more genuine than any he'd worn in years. "Please, I'd really enjoy the company." What happened next would later be described by Marcus as the most important business meeting of his life. As Emma tentatively slid into the booth across from him, her backpack still clutched protectively in her lap, Marcus found himself in unfamiliar territory. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals, commanded boardrooms full of executives, and built an empire from nothing, but he'd never had to navigate a conversation with a hungry 8-year-old old, who was trying to save her dying mother. "What would you like to eat?" Marcus asked, signaling the waiter. Emma's eyes widened as she scanned the menu. "Everything is so expensive. Maybe just some bread." "Emma," Marcus said firmly but kindly, "tonight, you can have anything you want. What's your favorite food?" For the first time since he'd approached her, Emma smiled a genuine, childlike grin that transformed her entire face. "I love spaghetti and meatballs. My mama used to make it for me before she got sick." Marcus ordered not just spaghetti and meatballs, but also chicken soup, fresh bread, salad, and dessert. As they waited for the food, Emma began to open up. She told him about her mother, a former nurse who'd been battling cancer for 2 years. She spoke about their tiny apartment, about how she'd learned to cook simple meals and do laundry. She talked about school, which she loved but sometimes had to miss when her mother was having bad days. The challenges Emma and her mother faced seemed insurmountable. Medical bills had drained their savings. Her mother's insurance had been cancelled when she lost her job. They were 3 months behind on rent, facing eviction. Emma had been selling her toys and books at a local pawn shop, but even that barely covered their basic needs. "What about your father?" Marcus asked gently. Emma's face clouded over. "He left when Mama got sick. Said he couldn't handle it." She shrugged with the forced casualness of a child who'd learned to accept adult failures. "It's okay. Me and Mama, we're a team." As Marcus listened to Emma's story, he felt ashamed of his own problems. His biggest concern that day had been whether to acquire a smaller competitor or develop a new product line. Meanwhile, this little girl was fighting battles that would challenge most adults. When the food arrived, Marcus watched Emma eat with the focused intensity of someone who wasn't sure when her next meal would come. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and he noticed her discreetly wrapping half of everything in napkins. "For Mama," she explained when she caught him watching. That simple gesture broke something inside Marcus Sterling. Here was a child, faced with more hardship than most adults could handle, and her first instinct was still to take care of someone else. In that moment, Marcus realized he'd spent so many years accumulating wealth that he'd forgotten what it was actually for. "Emma," Marcus said carefully, "would it be okay if I met your mother?" Emma's eyes filled with suspicion again. "Why?" "Because I think I might be able to help." "Are you from the government?" "Because Mama says we don't qualify for most programs because she made too much money before she got sick." Marcus shook his head. "No, I'm not from the government. I'm just someone who wants to help." The ride to Emma's apartment building was a journey across 2 different worlds. Marcus's driver navigated from the gleaming towers of Manhattan to a run-down neighborhood in Queens, where broken streetlights cast long shadows and the buildings seemed to lean against each other for support. Emma led him up 3 flights of creaking stairs to a door marked 4B. The apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean, filled with the kind of warmth that comes not from expensive furnishings but from love. Emma's mother, Sarah, was a thin woman in her early 30s who looked much older. Her sunken cheeks and the dark circles under her eyes told the story of her illness, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "Emma, who is this?" Sarah asked, pulling a robe tighter around her frail frame. "Mama, this is Marcus. He bought me dinner and he wants to help us." Sarah's face hardened with the pride of someone who'd been knocked down repeatedly but refused to stay down. "We don't accept charity." "It's not charity," Marcus said quickly. "It's an opportunity." Over the next hour, Marcus learned more about resilience than he had in 20 years of business. Sarah had been a registered nurse, working double shifts to support Emma after her husband left. The cancer diagnosis came with a mountain of medical bills that grew faster than she could pay them. She'd lost her job, her insurance, and eventually her savings, but she'd never lost her dignity or her fierce love for her daughter. The challenges were overwhelming. Sarah needed surgery that would cost $80,000. They were facing eviction in 2 weeks. Emma needed school supplies, winter clothes, and regular meals. Most importantly, Sarah needed to focus on getting well instead of worrying about survival. But Marcus Sterling didn't become a millionaire by backing down from challenges. As he listened to Sarah's story, his mind was already working, formulating plans, identifying solutions. This wasn't just about writing a check, though he was prepared to do that too. This was about creating sustainable change. "Sarah," Marcus said finally, "I have a proposition for you. I told you we don't take charity. And I told you this isn't charity, it's business." Marcus leaned forward. "I run a large company. We're always looking for qualified healthcare professionals to consult on our employee wellness programs. You have nursing experience and real-world knowledge about healthcare challenges. I'd like to offer you a consulting contract." Sarah frowned. "I can't work full-time right now. I'm not asking you to. This would be part-time, mostly remote work. You'd review our current health programs, suggest improvements, maybe write some educational materials. The contract would pay $50,000 a month to start, with full health benefits included." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. Why would you do this?" Marcus glanced at Emma, who was watching the conversation with the intense focus of a child who understood that her world was about to change. "Because your daughter taught me something tonight about what real wealth looks like. The next few months brought challenges that tested everyone involved. Sarah's surgery was successful, but her recovery was slow and painful. There were setbacks, days when the medical bills seemed to multiply faster than solutions could be found, moments when despair threatened to overwhelm hope. Emma struggled too. Having enough food and a stable home was wonderful, but she'd grown used to taking care of her mother, and learning to be a child again wasn't always easy. She'd built walls around her heart to protect herself from disappointment, and letting Marcus and other helpers into their lives required a kind of courage she wasn't sure she possessed. Marcus faced his own challenges. His board of directors questioned his new focus on employee wellness and community outreach. Some investors worried that his soft approach would hurt profits. He had to learn to balance his desire to help Sarah's family with the reality of running a business and respecting their independence. But slowly, steadily, things began to improve. Sarah's health stabilized, and she threw herself into her consulting work with the passion of someone who'd been given a second chance. Her insights helped Marcus's company develop innovative wellness programs that not only supported employees, but also saved money on healthcare costs. Emma blossomed too. With regular meals and a stable home, her natural intelligence and curiosity flourished. Marcus arranged for her to attend a better school, where her teachers quickly recognized her potential. She joined the chess club, made friends, and began to dream about a future that extended beyond mere survival. For Marcus, the changes were even more profound. The empty mansion he'd called home for years felt increasingly hollow, so he sold it and moved into a smaller place in a diverse neighborhood where children played in the streets and neighbors knew each other's names. He began to see his business not just as a money-making machine, but as a platform for creating positive change. The consulting arrangement with Sarah evolved into something more permanent. She became director of healthcare initiatives for Marcus's company, leading programs that helped employees navigate health challenges while reducing costs for the organization. Her own experience with illness and recovery made her uniquely qualified to design support systems that actually work. But perhaps the most significant change was in Marcus himself. The driven, isolated CEO who'd eaten alone in expensive restaurants was gone, replaced by a man who understood that true wealth isn't measured in bank account balances, but in the positive impact you have on other people's lives. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the same Manhattan restaurant where he'd first met Emma. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sarah, healthy and radiant in her new role, sat across from him reviewing quarterly reports on their healthcare initiatives. Emma, now 10 years old and full of confidence, was at the children's table with Marcus's goddaughter, both girls giggling over shared jokes and inside stories. "The program has exceeded all projections," Sarah was saying, her finger tracing graphs on her tablet. Employee satisfaction is up 30%. Healthcare costs are down 25%. And we're getting inquiries from other companies who want to implement similar programs. Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to Emma, who was helping the younger girl with her homework. The transformation was remarkable. The fearful, hungry child who'd scavenged for leftover food had become a confident, caring young person who tutored other children and volunteered at the local food bank. "You know," Marcus said to Sarah, "I used to think success meant having more than everyone else. Now I realize it means making sure everyone else has enough." Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that comes from someone who's been through the darkness and emerged into light. "Emma taught us both that lesson, didn't she? She saved my life," Marcus admitted. "I just didn't know I needed saving until I met her." As the evening wound down, Emma approached Marcus with the same direct honesty that had first captured his attention. "Marcus," she said, "I want to be like you when I grow up." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I want to help people the way you helped us. I want to build something that makes other people's lives better." Marcus felt his chest tighten with pride and emotion. "Emma, you're already doing that, every day, just by being who you are." The little girl who'd once collected leftovers from restaurant plates had grown into someone who collected hope, distributing it to everyone around her. She'd learned that true wealth isn't about what you accumulate, but about what you give away. And in teaching Marcus that lesson, she'd transformed not just her own life, but the lives of hundreds of employees who benefited from the programs her mother now led. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Marcus caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. The face looking back at him was older, maybe, but definitely wiser. The eyes held warmth instead of cold calculation. The smile was genuine instead of practiced. He thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, successful by every conventional measure, but hollow inside, eating alone while a hungry child scavenged for scraps just tables away. That man had been rich in money, but poor in everything that actually mattered. The journey from that moment to this one hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt and frustration. But every difficulty had been worth it to arrive at this place surrounded by people he loved, engaged in work that mattered, using his resources to create positive change instead of just accumulating more wealth. Marcus Sterling had learned the most important lesson of his life from an 8-year-old girl with tangled hair and worn-out clothes. That true wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. It's about seeing the people around you not as obstacles or opportunities, but as fellow human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and help when they need it. Emma had been collecting leftovers that night, but what she'd really been doing was teaching a lesson about abundance, that there's always enough to share when you have the right heart. She'd shown Marcus that the greatest return on investment isn't financial, it's human. The most valuable acquisition isn't a company or property, it's the trust and love of people whose lives you've touched in positive ways. Sometimes the people who have the least to give teach us the most about generosity. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we encounter angels disguised as hungry children in upscale restaurants, collecting not just leftover food, but leftover hope, and transforming it into something beautiful and life-changing. If this story inspired you to see wealth and success in a new light, please show your support by hitting that like button and sharing this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. What did Emma's story teach you about true wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and they mean the world to me. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Trillionaire in Love and hit that notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories that remind us what really matters in life. Remember, we're not just building a community here, we're building a movement of people who understand that the greatest riches come from lifting others up. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.